All right, I believe that is Steve Perry's first new single, No Erasing, in 25 years. It's off his album Traces, and I will tell you where to get it and where you can listen to it and how much you can enjoy it, just like we just did. But ladies and gentlemen, on our Celebrity Hotline, Steve Perry.
Heard it for the first time on your station.
Awesome.
Is that true? Wow,
yeah, I've been listening to the song forever, but I never get a chance to hear it come through a station through your limiters and everything. I was just grooving. It was sounding great.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, you know, that answers kind of my second question, but I'll ask, it's a statement now. During the 25 years that you took off, because you're just a spectacular voice, and I don't mean that just as a compliment, but I mean you're the Steve Perry voice. Was there a lot of the reason why don't you hear from Steve Perry anymore? And the answer would be to some people, oh, he must not have it. He blew out his throat. He can't sing. Did you hear a lot of that?
Yeah, I did hear a lot of that. But the truth is that I was just crispy. I was just burnt out. I was in the band for years, and we worked really hard. And I was really concerned because my passion for music was going away. My love for singing was going away. And I was not going to stand up there and just go through the motion. And, you know, back in those days, there was some occasional extra bad behaviors that sometimes would come into play, I might say.
Yeah, and, you might say that.
Those aren't going to replace my love for music. So at some point, I just had to tell the guys, I got to stop. It was the hardest thing I ever did because I figured the band members are going to be, you know, pissed enough.
And were they?
Yeah, they were. But the fans is where my heart was. I was concerned they're going to really be upset. But I had to stop.
And now you're back.
Yeah,
I'm going to try and pay you a compliment that you haven't been paid before, because I'm assuming you've met people that named their kid Sherry and things like that, maybe a Steve Perry tattoo on somebody. That's kind of like when you've been around a long time and done songs that are so important to so many people, you get that. So I'm going to try and give you a compliment that maybe you haven't been given. I swear to God this is true.
Okay.
I played you singing faithfully at all 3 of my weddings, and it never lost any significance.
Wait a minute. So you played faithfully all 3 of your weddings. Does that mean that I'm supposed to pay for the alimony now? Is that what that means?
I don't know what you saved, but it will make a dent. So let's take a moment to thank your mother. I was reading about you before you came on the show, because you can't just rely on being such a big fan of yours as to know things. So I was reading up on you, and you had gone out with a lot of different bands, trying out. You're a young man. You're getting in the bands because they're not stupid and they hire you, but you're not getting the record deal. In your mind, you quit. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going out. And then I believe it's Journey that calls, and your mom says, pick up the phone, Steve.
Yeah, it was exactly like that. What happened was I was in a band called the Alien Project, but we also called the band Street Talk because there was a lot of talk on the street that this band was pretty cool. So that's why when I did make a solo album years later, I paid homage to that. But back to that story, the bass player in the band Street Talk died in a car wreck just before we were about to get signed to Columbia Records. And Don Ellis called me and said, I'm so sorry to hear about that, but let me tell you, I've got this band called Journey, and they're looking for a singer. Are you interested? And I said, well, yeah. Wow. So they're going to make a musical change. I said, but they're more of a prog rock situation. Are you sure? Because, you know, I like writing songs. No, they want to write songs. So that's what happened. We got together and started writing, and the next thing I knew, I was in the band.
Yeah, it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
I was going to give up, and my mom said to me, no, don't do that. I was headed back home. I said, it was a big hit when Richard died. Richard Haddad was his name, from Detroit. It was a big hit to me that, you know, I'm not supposed to be doing this. I thought to myself, this wouldn't be happening. I got to stop. And she said, no, don't give up. Something will happen. And the next day I get the call from the manager of Journey.
That's pretty amazing.
Wow, that is a great story. And I love that it's true, because I read it and I went, do you think it's true? I was talking to my wife. I said, do you think it's true? Do you think his mom... Now, does your mom lord that over you all the time? You'd be nothing without me?
No, but she loved my dad. My dad was a singer, and though they ended up getting a divorce and never reuniting ever again, she knew that I had something in me that my dad had given me. My dad had a beautiful voice, and she knew I had a pretty nice voice, and she wanted me to pursue it.
Well, it's an amazing. And now, okay, let's jump up to the current record. Well, the record itself is called Traces. The single that we just heard, No Erasing. Now, is that spelled that way just because that's the way you sing it, or is it supposed to mean more than just no erasing?
I always write the way I sing.
Wow.
And that's how it sounds to me. That's how I sing it. And so I write it the way it sounds. I've done that with Journey. I've done that everywhere.
We're talking with Steve Perry of Journey, and he does have this new album coming out. You can listen to the new song Noah Racing and watch the video at steveperry.com. I know a lot of people, Steve, are probably wondering, they're excited that you're back in any capacity, but people are probably wondering, how is your relationship with Neil Schon and the rest of the band Journey?
Well, it's like any relationship. I mean, Sarah, let me ask you a question. Are you in a relationship right now?
I am.
You are. How long have you been in that relationship?
10 years.
10 years. Were you in a relationship before that?
Yes.
And are you in touch with that person?
No.
Why? What happened?
Fighting.
Wow.
Well, but you're happy where. My point is that you're pretty happy where you are right now. Right?
I get where you're going, and it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that you wish anybody any ill wind in any way.
Yeah.
You just kind of move on, don't you?
That's a good point.
And by the way, they've moved on too. We all have lived separate lives, and so in some way, we've gone our separate ways, and we're living separate lives. And there's nothing wrong with it. I don't think there's any right or wrong about this. I think that everybody's doing what they feel is best for them, and so am I.
And is that what you're kind of talking about, kind of a double meaning with Noah Racing? Is it, I don't want to erase the past. I still want to celebrate that and embrace that, but now I'm moving on to the future?
I think that there are several layers of that type of thing in that song. Originally, it was written about going to a class reunion, running into somebody you knew in high school, and you used to be an item, and you remember back in the day when you used to get in the car and go park in this one area. So guess what? You get in the car, you leave the class reunion, you go sit in the back seat of her car in that location where you used to smooch, and you have a couple of smooches in the back seat of her car just for old times. Nothing else happens because you both have lives that have moved on, just like Sarah's. But you know what? You're living different lives now, but you're respective of the fact at some point that you did have something together. So it's about rekindling the possibility of the Noah Racing thing. You're just going to own that emotion, even if you're not together. You can still own the emotion and not get back together. So that's one sort of dimension, and it's also about the relationship with the fans.
Yeah, which seems like that's very important to you, which I think there's not enough of. I think people forget when they get anywhere near your status, and that's rare right there. Were there 20 guys in the music business currently as big as Steve Perry? But I think sometimes big stars forget you kind of work for the fans. It sounds like you kept that in mind.
Well, it's their appreciation, it's their voting emotionally into their hearts. They vote you into their hearts. You just don't write music and boom, you're in. They decide whether they're going to be involved in your music or not, or whether your music has the opportunity to be in their hearts or not. That's not my decision. If people embrace it, it's their decision. And so you've got to be respectful of the fact that they've made that decision, and that's a powerful thing, I think.
Let me go jump just the tiniest bit backwards. When you and Journey went separate ways, and it sounds like it was amicable. I mean, if I were in the band, I'd have been mad at you, but nothing. It's not the end of the world. Did you expect, and not because they're nothing without you, I'll tell you, I thought Journey would be no more. You don't have Steve Perry, you don't have Journey. Neil start a new band for sure, but that band's going to go away, and it didn't. Did that surprise you?
No, I knew these guys would move on. They've had some great singers. They like to keep working. I was ready to stop. And so what am I going to do? Of course, go move, go do it. They've had 3 singers since we split.
Honestly, I didn't know that. I only know the Arnel Panetta guy, who seems great.
By the way, Arnel's been there at least for, I think, 10 years.
Wow.
Does
and I
that
got to meet him
bother
at the
you?
Hall of Fame backstage. He's such a great kid. I gave him a shout-out from the stage because he sings his heart out every night for those guys.
You know what bothers me about this, and I don't mean any offense because I think he's fantastic, but I think he sings your heart out every night. I think it's an impression.
I disagree, Danny. I mean, he has made those songs his. He reaches into his heart, and he puts his heart into those lyrics. Perhaps maybe he, at some point, was trying to emulate me, and that's how he accessed some of his feelings about those songs. There's nothing wrong with that, but I do think that he is pouring his own heart into those songs, and that's why at the Hall of Fame I gave him a shout out.
Yeah, you did.
And I would like to thank him for pouring his heart out on stage every night.
Wow. Hey, there's a very good chance we're talking to Steve Perry, who turns out to be the sweetest man in the whole wide world. Who was Do you remember your old relationship, Sarah? Please be nice to that guy. No, now I'm going to adopt him. Jeez, Steve. What a sweetie pie. All right.
We've got to wrap up with Steve Perry, but we want to remind you guys that this album, the full album, will be released on October 5th on Fantasy Records. It's available for pre-order on CD, digital download, and vinyl at steveperry.com. You can listen to and watch the awesome video for No Erasing at steveperry.com. Steve Perry, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You're the greatest.
That was beautiful, Sarah. I owe you money for such a gorgeous little intro right
I love Steve Perry.
Really
Steve Perry, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. The new record, the new single is Erasing. The new album is Trace of Steve Perry in the Hizzy.